Hello to everyone joining us around the world. My name is Bobby Quintos, Managing Director for Delta Offshore Energy. We are delighted that our project has been recognized by the Indo-Pacific Business Forum 2020
and former Secretary Perry spoke. We followed up the 2018 forum by supporting the event when it was held in Bangkok late last year under very different circumstances, which was extremely successful with more than 1,000 people attending. This kind of gathering is obviously hard to imagine.
In the annals of time, 2020 will be remembered for many things, few of them being the IMF forecast that Vietnam will remain one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia. 2020 is also the year that Vietnam's GDP per capita will continue its steady rise and
Good afternoon and greetings from Washington, D.C. My name is Brian Healy. I am the Director of Global.
Hi, my name is Firdaus Hussein.
yet another ASEAN economy, specifically the Philippines. Vietnam approved its first public-private partnership law this year, and Vietnam's institutions were tested and their resilience affirmed what many astute observers have known all along, that Vietnam is a steadily rising star in the region. While the specter of the COVID-19 pandemic remains, though through strong leadership and coordinated action, Vietnam has been able to rapidly extinguish the spread of the virus within its borders and reopen safely. However, being open for business has its limitations when neighbors and trading partners continue to suffer from the pervasive drop in consumer demand we are witnessing globally. While many large businesses are capable of weathering this challenging time by trimming operations or turning to established banking networks, the manufacturing and tourism sectors have been severely affected. As a result, many Vietnamese households are experiencing extreme financial uncertainty. Numerous small and medium-sized enterprises will struggle to regain their former momentum, and in some cases, businesses must face the prospect of terminating operations. In recognition of our enduring friendship with Vietnam, our partnership in the Indo-Pacific region, and the difficulties this pandemic poses, USAID contributed $9.5 million as well as a donation of 100 ventilators to support Vietnam's fight against COVID-19 and contribute to its economic recovery. Small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, play a central role in Vietnam's economy, accounting for 98% of all enterprises, 40% of the GDP, and employ 60% of the workforce. However, due to COVID-19, many of the typical issues faced by SMEs have been amplified, such as access to finance, human resource availability, and market access. In response, USAID programming such as the USAID Linkages for Small and Medium Enterprises project is helping SMEs
On behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I'm Myron Brilliant, the Executive Vice President and Head of International Affairs at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I'm delighted to be able to address the third Indo-Pacific Business Forum. I'm also pleased that Charles Friedman, the Senior Vice President for Asia, John Goyer, the head of our Southeast Asia program, and of course, Nisha Biswal, the Senior Vice President for South Asia, will be also addressing this forum as well. We're honored to host the first forum at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington in 2018, in which Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Ross, and former Secretary Perry spoke. We followed up the 2018 forum by supporting the event when it was held in Bangkok late last year under very different circumstances, which was extremely successful with more than 1,000 people attending. This kind of gathering is obviously hard to imagine these days, and we all look forward to the time when we can be back in person together, because the connectivity is what we all strive for, and we will get back to that post-pandemic. But I'm very pleased that both Secretaries Pompeo and Secretary Ross are addressing the forum again this year, and that Secretary Brouillette is also joining. We're all doing this, as we said, largely virtually. We've held this forum in Asia, in the United States, and now uniquely virtually. It may be a challenge to figure out what we do for an encore, but I'm sure we're up for the challenge. I want to thank our host, the government of Vietnam, and in particular, Prime Minister Phuc, whom I finally recall hosting in Washington during his visit in 2017. Thank you for being such a gracious host. In addition, I want to thank our friend, Ambassador Ngoc, who ably represents Vietnam in Washington and who works tirelessly as an advocate for the U.S.-Vietnam commercial relationship. On the U.S. side, I want to thank Secretary Pompeo for his leadership in the United States government Indo-Pacific strategy. As an aside, I recently had the pleasure of interviewing Secretary Pompeo at a recent forum here in Washington, D.C. And again, he underscored his commitment to encourage and support U.S. engagement across East Asia. Ambassador Crittenberg, thank you. You've been a great friend and supporter of the business community. I want to thank you in particular for your support of the U.S.-Vietnam Investment Summit a couple of weeks ago, and the work you do in Vietnam on behalf of the relationship is equally compelling. This forum obviously comes at a challenging time in the United States. With elections just a few days away, attention is focused inward. However, regardless of the outcome, the U.S. Chamber will continue to be an advocate for pro-business policies to support economic growth and prosperity. And regardless of the outcome, the Indo-Pacific region will remain vitally important to the United States economy. The region must therefore remain uppermost in American economic policy priorities. And I'm confident that no matter who wins the election, that the U.S. government will focus its attention on strengthening and deepening ties to the Indo-Pacific region. I'd like to make three main points today. First, we support the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy in a number of ways. We think it's a great framework for addressing and managing challenges in the region. Importantly, it recognizes the increasingly large role that India, Bangladesh, and the subcontinent plays in our economic relationship with Asia. However, the economic dimension of this initiative should be commensurate with the security side of it. We need a broader economic strategy towards the region. A broader strategy includes greater market access through bilateral free trade agreements, such as those that were started with Japan and are being negotiated with other countries in other regions like the UK and Kenya. It should include functional agreements in narrow areas such as digital trade, as well as under consideration with partners like Australia. Moreover, we previously supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership in the context of FOIP. It is well past that time that we seriously consider ways in which to engage in a successor agreement, the CPTPP, or some other new evolution of it. Such a broader approach should embrace the highest standards and rules, including some of the understandings that were reached through the USMCA early in the year. Some of the USMCA agreement is a good model. Not all, but some is a good model for the kind of approach we want to take in the Indo-Pacific region. Asia is actively pursuing FTAs, for example, even during the pandemic. The RCEP countries have continued negotiations and are working to finalize that agreement this year. Vietnam recently signed an agreement with the European Union, and Japan has several bilateral deals in the region. The list goes on. Not all these agreements, however, raise the high standard, the high bar that we think is important for facilitating trade and investment. And these agreements, of course, do not have the presence of the United States. The United States is not a party to many of the negotiations going on right now in the region, and therefore it puts U.S. companies at a competitive disadvantage. We need to be in the game. The fact is, when we stand on trade and when we engage, we help elevate the populations in these countries. We bring new opportunities. We bring the best of our management, and we bring the best of our technology and know-how. When we don't get engaged, the United States falls behind, but these countries don't benefit from America's lack of engagement. A broader strategy is much needed to counterweight to the competitive challenges in the region. We applaud programs like Asia Edge, the Infrastructure Transaction and Assistance Network, and the Digital Connectivity and Cybersecurity Partnership, and others that help create healthy, enabling conditions and industry engagement to promote best practices and regulatory environments. These address important areas, but in the context of a broader strategy, they should be accompanied by meaningful market access and high standard rules of the road. That's where the U.S. Chamber comes in, and that's where the U.S. Chamber wants to work with other like-minded institutions in promoting meaningful market access and high standards. But we can't do that alone. We need the help of the American Chamber community, and we, of course, need to work very closely with the U.S. government and the governments in the Indo-Pacific region. U.S. engagement is critical. It's vital. This is my second point. Turmoil from the pandemic, the geostrategic issues, and political uncertainties have created a complicated environment. The United States, in coordination with allies and strategic partners, including Vietnam, the Quad countries, and others, should vigorously engage and play a leadership role. The Indo-Pacific strategy can provide a useful framework within which to exercise leadership, but this strategy cannot succeed absent strong partnerships across the region. In this context, we welcome China's economic rise, but there are tremendous challenges associated with China's rise. And here we have been doing for some time, I would simply re-emphasize the need to encourage transparency, encourage the best, highest standards for market access, and a commitment to international rules. Disruptive and distorting trade policies must be avoided. Industrial policies that favor national champions undermine market confidence. And in this regard, we want a constructive and pragmatic relationship with China. But China also has to come to the table and make its own commitments in this area felt and realized and tangible. Third, following the last point, we need to double down on rebuilding commerce and ensuring the supply chains are not distorted and are not disrupted. We need to work through this pandemic and get to the other side. We have struggled with COVID. Countries have looked inward. Nationalist rhetoric has already illustrated how the distribution of any eventual vaccine will pose tremendous challenges. We support our own interests by supporting the international community, including by working through regional and multilateral alliances. If we want to grow, and we do want to grow, we need to work together on trade, supply chain issues, and in many other areas. We can promote greater energy cooperation, sustainability, development and market reforms, access and security through Asia Edge. Looking at the tremendous infrastructure needs and opportunities in the region, programs like the Infrastructure Transaction and Assistance Network have huge potential to address the region's massive infrastructure needs. And I'm really pleased to see in the US government enhanced efforts through the Development Finance Corporation and other tools that we now have available that will help the public-private partnership in encouraging more investment in infrastructure across the region. We can set the rules for the road for the digital economy through vehicles such as digital connectivity and cybersecurity partnership. The International Development Finance Corporation, as I said, and the Exim Bank, USDA, and other agencies must play a critical role in all these areas. There's been far too much uncertainty in the international trade arena. We need to start creating certainty in order to build confidence, without which investment does not occur. The pandemic will end. It will end. It will end. Let me stress that. And the world will have to adjust in many ways. It already is adjusting. Workforce will never be the same post-pandemic. Digital issues will creep into our work in a way that we could not have fathomed a year ago. This change will bring opportunities. It can bring prosperity. But change is not easy for everyone, and we don't want anyone left behind. For that to happen, the United States and the Indo-Pacific region must work closer and closer together. This is a dynamic region of the world. U.S. leadership is critical to ensuring that the Indo-Pacific thrives and grows and remains dynamic in nature. And the Indo-Pacific needs the United States. It needs the private sector in the United States to make investments, to believe and have confidence in the developments of the economies in the Indo-Pacific. We recognize that the United States is not alone in taking a hit. Our economy certainly has been hit. Our people have felt the brunt of the pandemic. But we know that the pandemic is not just a US issue, it's a global issue. And with that, we will recover. And in fact, as we see such collective efforts in the United States and around the world, we are reassured about the commitment we all are making to ensure that trade goes forward, that our people will recover, that the health of our economy and the health of our people is first and foremost in our minds. But we cannot retreat. We cannot retreat. We need to embrace openness. We need to embrace the need for supply chains to work. We need to embrace the opportunities that exist before us. Together, we can work effectively to knock down barriers, to promote opportunities, and to expand commerce and cooperation between the people of the Indo-Pacific and the United States. For decades, the United States leadership in the region has been based on economic openness. We commit to doing that in the United States. We commit to openness. We will strengthen our existing partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region by lowering, not raising barriers to trade. We will, at the U.S. Chamber, continue to be an advocate for this. When we run into barriers in other countries, we must overcome them through fair, tough, and enforceable trade rules. We do believe that's important. But this is not the future. The future is finding paths for cooperation in new areas of energy development, new areas of technology development, new areas that will create opportunities in the agriculture and manufacturing space, new areas that will advance commerce, tourism, transportation, and many other areas, including infrastructure. The fact is that U.S. leadership, can be and should be vigorous and sustained when it comes to the Indo-Pacific region, is critical to rebuilding prosperity. Working with our allies, we can address supply chain disruptions, create certainty, facilitate investment, level the playing field, and rebuild the environment for longer-term economic growth. We commit to you at the U.S. Chamber to work with all of you on these endeavors. Thank you very much.
Good morning to all of you in Hanoi, and greetings to everyone joining virtually from across the Indo-Pacific region. I'm Daniel Whitley, Associate Administrator of the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service. I am thrilled to welcome everyone to the panel, Promoting a Regional Ethanol Strategy. Although I would have loved to address all of you in person, I am thrilled to be addressing you virtually nonetheless. Biofuels play an important role in U.S. agriculture and energy policies, as well as our environmental stewardship and our sustainability efforts. Despite current demand and price fluctuations for biofuels as a result of COVID-19, I am optimistic we will soon begin to see the return of historical demand for trends and prices of global biofuels. In the long term, there's also significant opportunity to leverage the advantages of biofuels as countries around the world continue to seek ways to meet greenhouse gas reduction targets at competitive prices. The environmental benefits are part of the reason the United States, Brazil, the European Union, and more than 24 other countries mandate or encourage blending of biofuels in transportation fuel. Trade is a critical component of the U.S. biofuel strategy. USDA actively engages with foreign governments to expand global market access and remove trade barriers restricting the flow of U.S. biofuels and feedstocks. To make this happen, USDA works closely with the U.S. ethanol industry, including the U.S. Grains Council, who will be speaking later on this panel. The Indo-Pacific region, including Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines, holds significant export potential for U.S. biofuels. But that is just one part of the story. The other part, these countries and others in the Indo-Pacific region are interested in building, growing, and strengthening their own domestic industries, as well as implementing policies encouraging the use of biofuels. To that end, USDA and all of our attachés around the world, we will continue to assist governments in this mutually beneficial endeavor. USDA also continues to support the efforts of the U.S. Grains Council in providing technical support and collaboration on ethanol production for countries in this region. I am so sorry I will miss the panel discussion, but I know it will highlight and illustrate how the U.S. ethanol industry continues to make strides in support of regional biofuels growth. I wish you all a very successful panel discussion and business forum. Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Hi, my name is Firdaus Hussain. I'm the Regional Ethanol Consultant for the U.S. Grains Council. Today, we're going to have a look at the ethanol supply, production, and outlook in the U.S. and also here in Asia. Overall, the U.S. led the world in ethanol production in 2019 with an estimated total output of 15.8 billion gallons. 26 states are home to 205 biorefineries with a total installed capacity of 17 million gallons per year, although half of the total nameplate capacity is found in Iowa, Nebraska, and Illinois alone. On average, the plants are running at about 92% capacity at any given time. With advancing agricultural technology, farmers are becoming more efficient in growing crops. Corn crops harvesting a robust 168 bushels of corn per acre in 2019 for a total production of 13.7 billion bushels. Meanwhile, agriculture producers have been reducing per bushel inputs like land, fertilizer, water. Farmers now have access to GPS-guided seed planting and soil data analytics to assist them in planting their crops. This gives them more yields per acre as compared to where they started back in the 1920s and 30s. The U.S. economy benefits a lot from an ethanol industry. 2019 was a relatively challenging year with trade policy decisions that pressured down global crop marketing, coupled with bad weather and creating havoc across the U.S. Corn Belt. Many were looking for a fresh start in 2020. Last year, U.S. ethanol had grossed over $21 billion and its co-products had contributed about over $7 billion in gross value. Now, based on average prices and product yields in 2019, a typical dry mill of ethanol plant added about roughly $1.20 of additional value, which is equivalent to 31% value to every bushel of corn processed. In 2019 alone, the production of 15.8 billion gallons of ethanol and 39.6 million metric tons of co-products and distillers oil had substantial economic impact, including close to 69,000 direct jobs, 280,000 indirect and induced jobs, over 43 billion contribution to the GDP, and 23.3 billion in household income. Ethanol market has increased significantly, especially in the last 10 years. A decade ago, the world export market was slightly above 750 million gallons. Today, the market has grown almost 330% since then to a whopping 2.5 billion export market, as many countries adopt the use of ethanol either for fuel or industrial use. The US now holds about 61% of world exports, making them the single biggest top exporter for both denatured and anhydrous ethanol. Brazil holds about 25% market share with a total output of 8.6 billion gallons per year. The European Union at 4%, China at 2%, and India at 2%. In recent years, we have seen a growing use of ethanol globally, with just over 13 billion gallons in 2000 to more than 29 billion gallons in 2019. Last year, ethanol totaled nearly 2.5 billion gallons as countries increasingly recognize the role for trade in meeting policy mandates. More than 60 countries currently have ethanol policies, a number that is growing as more and more countries seek this opportunity to capture the environmental, human health, and economic benefits of ethanol. And the US Grains Council is in the forefront of developing these partnerships around the globe to expand the worldwide use of ethanol and the world